All right. Any more thoughts on that? And then we'll move on to temples. That's
on a lighter
right.
note.
Yes. On a lighter note, temples? You think temples are a lighter note? RFM, have you not been listening to me rant about temples for the last
I was
2
thinking
years?
better than death by freezing or killing sister missionaries.
It is. And it actually is a good segue, because now we're going to talk about what people will do at any cost to get these buildings passed, right? All the city council, town council meetings they go to, everything they manipulate. So again, it's Tut Temple update time, and I'm going to breeze through a whole bunch of them because there's a lot. So this will be really fun. Hold on. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The first one, of course, is our darling of the temple building, the McKinney Texas Temple, Fairview, Texas. This is the ginormous 173-foot tall temple, 43,000 square feet in Fairview. It's the only town that we follow where the town council unanimously voted, no, we're not going to do this. And that happened back in August. So since then, if we go to our slide, I do know that, you know what, let's watch this news story really quick, and then I'll go into some other things if we can play this, Bill.
Town of Fairview has now agreed to a non-binding mediation in its dispute with a religious group and their plans to build a large temple in a residential neighborhood. It's a controversy that we've been following for you for months. Our JD Miles telling us about the effort to keep this fight out of court.
Think twice this size of a building.
Fairview Mayor Henry Lesner stands outside the town hall talking about an issue he says has consumed him for 3 months. That issue is whether the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, currently located down the street on Stacy Road, should be allowed to build a new 43,000 square foot temple as high as 65 feet with a spire well over 150 feet in a residential neighborhood.
I mean, we don't like to be crosswise with a church of any kind. So, we'd like to see things happen, but we do have a really large issue in our town, and they're coming in and they're trying to set aside our zoning ordinances.
The mayor sent this letter to residents this week announcing that the town has scheduled a mediation next week with attorneys for the church, saying we hope to negotiate with the LDS church to either scale down the current plans to fit in the neighborhood or move the temple to a location in the portion of the town zoned for commercial use. Speaking with us today, the mayor called leaders of the church bullies who think they are above the law.
One of the things I always like to do with the LDS folks that come here, especially the ones from Salt Lake City, who, they're not familiar with the area. So I like to take them up on our 4th floor and have them look out at our town. Look out in the daytime when you see nothing but trees.
In August, the town denied a building permit to the church, which sent us this statement about the upcoming mediation. The church looks forward to meeting with the town representatives and working with them on ways to meet the community's concerns, while at the same time protecting the church's religious liberty rights. The church has an online petition with 14,000 signatures in support of the new temple, which it says will give their growing membership more room to practice their faith. The mayor says the town has started a legal defense fund in case mediation fails to resolve the dispute, and the battle over what would be Fairview's tallest building goes to court. In Fairview, JD Miles, CBS News, Texas.
And this is what we call Fairview, the little town that could. Boy, that Mayor Lesner, we just absolutely love him. Now, I do know that the LDS Church has kept the pressure up these last 2 months, and litigation is always just kind of back there in everybody's minds. And so the mayor, if you can go to the next slide, as they talked about in the news story, there he is, Mayor Henry Lesner. He sent a letter out to everybody in the town, and I got a copy of the letter. And if you go to the next slide, this is what struck me so interesting. Here is the the website for the town of Fairview, right? Typically on a town, you'll see, sewer, soccer signups, cleanups, Christmas tree takeaway. What do you see on this town's page? First of all, a letter from the mayor where he's trying to tell everybody how they're fighting a church. And second of all, please help us. Please donate. I just thought these things are so out of place on the website for a town when you should just be normally functioning with your civic duties. Not this town. They're in gridlock over the LDS church in this temple. So I was going to read the letter. I'm going to read just a part of it. If you go to, let me see the next slide. And then the next one, because I think we got the gist of it in the story. And then the last one, those are some pictures of the wonderful Fairview residents. So let's see. Oh, you know what? I think, anyway, it doesn't matter. I want to just stress this. To continue to show our good faith, town leaders have agreed to participate in non-binding mediation with church representatives. The mediation process involves an independent third party who will try to assist both sides with resolving an issue. This is going to be interesting to see, because I picture the mediator sitting there and the church says, well, God told us to. How do you mediate that? I mean, if that's their argument, which it is, there's really no wiggle room on that, is there? So anyway, they just go on to say that it's important to stress that while private parties can reach a resolution through mediation, because Fairview is a municipal government, any proposed agreement would only be considered in a duly noticed public meeting by the town's council. So no matter what mediation says, they're going to have to take it through the same process of notifying people and having a meeting. And then the last thing they do is they talk about their defense fund, which they have set up. The town council has recently approved the creation of a zoning defense fund to protect the town if there is litigation. I urge community members and any other persons who believe in our cause to consider contributing to our zoning defense fund. And you can go to fairview.org, the town site, to find out. And if you go to the next slide, I included the barcode here in case anybody wants to pause here and, and contribute to this. But again, the irregularity of this, a bill or RFM, have you ever heard of anything like this? A town fighting a church, putting together a fund. It's just crazy.
No, when you were writing that letter from, what was it, Bill, the Mountain Home Church, or what was it that was?
Mountain Road?
The Mountain Road Church that was going to allow the warming center, and then there was the neighborhood upheaval, and so they said no, and they wrote the letter saying they're not going to do it. Because why? They didn't want to cause all this division amongst the community. And I'm sitting there looking at that and saying that should have been the letter the church wrote to Fairview over this whole temple thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. We still have hope that, cooler heads will prevail. The PR seems to be so out of control in a negative way. Maybe as we speak, they're coming up with some plans that are more like the Yorba Linda Temple that would fit nicely there, and they could start everything tomorrow. And like I like to say, our ordinances should not stop your ordinances. Just make it fit, and you can start building tomorrow. So anyway, that's Fairview.
You know
if
what
you guys
my prediction is?
What?
You know what my prediction is?
What is it?
This will come to nothing.
I know. That's my
There's
prediction.
no mediator in the world that's going to be able to bring these two parties together.
I just hope the mediator goes, what the hell? It makes me think of Lone Mountain. They had a lobbyist who went in there, and after kind of dealing with them went, I've never seen anything like this. There's no budging anywhere on this. They are set in stone. And that's what this is too. I almost feel like it's a PR move. There are faithful members who are kind of grumbling a little bit, questioning what's happening there. And the church can say, look, we tried. We went to mediation. We tried, right?
A non-binding mediation is really no more effective than a phone call.
Yeah.
Between the parties. No, you can't resolve it between yourselves. A mediator's not going to be able to do it.
Exactly. That's what I think so too. But the pressure's on behind the scenes, the pressure that the suit is coming. And this is something the town officials have said, okay, we'll try this. We'll do anything to not go to litigation, but we will if we have to. So
the
we'll keep
nuclear
watching.
option.
The one thing that struck me is when he says the people come from Salt Lake, he's talking about church officials, right? He takes them up to the 4th floor of the building.
Yep.
They look over the landscape, and he says, look how much of an obstacle that church would be, how much it would stand out like a sore thumb. And the church leaders are going, that's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
It's not a bug.
Building to stand up higher than all the others and to stick out like a sore thumb. I was just on my way back from northern Utah. I'm passing through Cedar City, and there's the temple right up on the hill all by itself. It's what the church wants, and every place it can get one is a temple that nobody can avoid seeing standing out and sticking out like a sore thumb.
Because if you can't avoid seeing our temples, you're more likely to join the church.
Yeah,
I think so. I'd like to hear anecdotally, has anyone been driving and said, what is that? I must drive toward it. I must find out a way to go in. I just wonder if that's ever happened. Most likely,
there
I
were
think
stories
people
about
go, what the hell is that?
There's stories
especially
about
at
that in
night.
the 70s with the Washington, D.C. temple.
This is where they learned it. I'm not kidding. Prior to that, the temples were just kind of there in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., they got so much positive PR that they thought, this is interesting.
I
And
don't
ever
think
since
anybody
then-
actually did it, but there was discussion about spray painting on the side of the temple in huge letters, "Surrender Dorothy."
Yeah, you see that
You
meme
heard
all
that
the
one.
time. Na, 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 na. Yeah.
You
All right,
probably did it.
Fairview.
Can I say one more thing, Rebecca?
What?
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
This whole incident, it's a great point to demonstrate that Mormonism is really about outward appearances. And I'll make my point this way. You can be a really good person and not be a Mormon. And you can be a really good Mormon and not be a good person. Because what Mormonism concerns itself with almost entirely is outward obligations, outward keeping of mundane rules, talks about a change of heart, but very little of the religion is actually focused on helping somebody to become a growing, developing individual.
Yep, 100%. That's exactly right. So, which is why it's such a mystery to all of us as we see this temple building and what it means and what it does to communities. Okay, Cody, Wyoming. Here we go. Just a smaller temple, 10,000 square feet, 101 foot high spire. If we go to our next slide, we did report on that stealth groundbreaking that they had. And as you can see, after that, equipment moved in, building has started. Everybody thinks, oh, we're done, right? Wrong. Go to the next slide. And we touched on this last time. They're headed to the Supreme Court. I don't think people realize how tenacious these residents in all these towns are. The announcements that you see about building and things being approved, this does not mean there are not things happening behind the scenes. So in the case of Cody, Wyoming, and I hope that our family will chime in on this, the Preserve Our Cody neighborhood's first brief is due tomorrow on November 12th. And then there's a mandated 30 to 45 day response time with the LDS and the POCN kind of going back and forth with response briefs. The neighborhood will have the final say with the very last brief, and then they'll schedule a conference and a hearing in the Washington State Supreme Court, and then eventually a decision, but not until summer of 2025 probably. What does that mean to you, RFM? Maybe you can help us understand that a little bit.
Well, first off, I think you said Washington. I know you meant Wyoming.
Oh, sorry, Wyoming. Yeah, Wyoming Supreme Court. Yeah.
What it means to me is that they're having an appellate process. If their first brief is due November 12th, 2024, I will bet you even money that that'll be a continuance.
Mm-hmm.
They're always continued, these initial deadlines for filing briefs, whether it's the initial brief or the response brief or the reply brief, almost always are those continued. So probably nothing's going to be filed tomorrow except for a motion for continuance, which will be granted in due course, probably without objection from the other side. And all these other things, they end up being filed in order because, of course, you have to look at the initial brief before you can file your response. You have to look at the response before you can file your reply. It takes a lot of time and a lot of continuances. And then finally, after everything's done, then it's set for a hearing for oral argument. Then that happens. And then the judges can take months and even years, actually, though hopefully not, but months to issue an opinion.
Yeah. So what do you think about this? They really very quickly did the groundbreaking and then right away started building. What happens when the temple is all the way built in summer of 2025? Does that factor into a judge's opinion? It's
No.
already there.
I'm sorry. It should not factor into the judge's
should not.
opinion at
They
all.
can
It
say,
doesn't make
"Take it
any
down."
difference. If the church is dumbass enough to go building a temple when it hasn't been approved with finality, then they bear the risk of having it torn down should the ruling go against them.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. And again, people don't know. These are all still ongoing. So please don't count anybody out, and Preserve Our Cody neighborhood, which has a website and also has a Facebook page. They also take donations because, again, these are residents out of their own pocket who are just trying to see justice done in their town. So any thoughts on Wyoming before we go on, Bill?
Nope. The good news for the church, the good news for the church is that they don't have to worry about the money they're spending because it's not theirs anyway.
I guess not. That's true. Tithing.
And they got lots of it.
And they got plenty of it. That's the whole point. Yep. Okay. Heber Valley. We haven't talked about them for a long time. 87,000 square feet. Oh my gosh. 216 foot high spire. What is going on there? Go to the next slide. Crickets. That's right. Construction bids have stopped. The land is covered with weeds and grass. It's silent there. There's nothing. There is a lawsuit going on from the residents there, but nothing on the docket. Nothing has happened. It's just absolute crickets. So we'll see.
Well, that's what makes sense. That's what should be happening, is nothing if it's being appealed.
Yep, that's exactly right. But they had their groundbreaking just 3 or 4 days after the announcement. So it's kind of interesting that you can break ground and then go through all that, and now crickets. So, okay, Lone Mountain. Again, you guys may not realize this. The residents there are also launching lawsuits saying that there was irregularities in the unanimous decision by the Vegas City Council to build the temple. There's all kinds of things going on in all of these towns as they keep on keeping on. So I think we have a little news story on Lone Mountain quickly here. Yep. Look at that temple. Oh my gosh. Look at the size of that.
Lawyers for a church are seeking to intervene in a lawsuit against the city of Las Vegas just ahead of another vote on a religious temple next week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Denise Valdez.
And I'm Brian Loftus. 8 News Now reporter James Schaefer has what court documents show and why the church said they don't believe city attorneys can't adequately represent their interests.
Brian, Denise, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is saying they can do something the city of Las Vegas cannot: defend against religious discrimination. Tonight, an update from what court documents show and where newly elected officials stand on the issue.
And those motions pass.
The city of Las Vegas's final vote was only the beginning of legal action against the city council. But for 2 months, the LDS Church has been attempting to intervene and fight for their property, arguing in court documents the city does not adequately represent their interests, adding the church has a unique ability to cite possible religious discrimination from a denial of their temple.
I've done a number of meetings with the neighbors in that area, and I think Victoria will agree they're very angry.
After the church's initial attempt to intervene, Shelley Berkeley, now City of Las Vegas mayor-elect, said she had met with the community filing legal action, responding during an 8 News Now mayoral debate.
With the people that I met with, they seem to think that the next mayor could magically overturn the vote. And I explained to them that now this is in the courts will decide, but it was a unanimous vote and that cannot be overturned.
One of those arguments in the ongoing court battle is that the city colluded with the property owner before the vote. Lawyers for the LDS Church arguing that the rural group failed to even mention the name of the organization which allegedly was colluding, which does appear to reference the church. This all ahead of the next vote for the property regarding an easement. If denied, residents argue it could stop the temple in its tracks.
Now, the judge has not yet decided if the LDS Church can intervene. However, they have apparently done so in similar lawsuits in Texas and Wyoming. The next vote on the site will go before the Planning Commission this Tuesday. Reporting live from the newsroom, James Schaefer, 8 News Now.
James, thanks for that. The LDS Church did respond to 8 News Now regarding this vote. And in part, it reads, the item is a land use entitlement request to vacate U.S. government easements in response to a condition imposed by the city of Las Vegas. The current agenda item does not change any aspect of the approved project.
All right, I will decipher that for you very quickly. So, of course, unanimous vote, yes to the Lone Mountain Temple, the Lone Mountain Temple. That's right. Gosh, they all get mixed up. I can't even remember anymore. Yeah, exactly. But a lot of the people who voted, people in the city council, the mayor, new election, it's been flipped, right? There are new people there. So some of the residents are like, well, can't you guys just go revisit this? Those of you that didn't get campaign contributions from the church's lawyers, and the mayor's trying to explain, no, that's not how it works. It's now in the courts. Now, there's a very interesting thing going on. Some of the residents question a small parcel of land connected to this temple development that they're going to run sewer through, saying, has it even indeed been annexed into the city? That's kind of problematic. So there's an easement that the church is trying to get removed removed so that they can use that parcel for the same purpose. And that's going to be coming up tomorrow night at a council meeting. Now, as I understand it, they were supposed to notify residents right there in the immediate area, like 1,000 feet, that this was coming up for the meeting, that the easement, they were requesting it be lifted. Nobody, or not the right people, have been notified. As I understand it from the residents, they're not getting the information. So this is going to be a hot meeting. We're not exactly sure what this has to do with the temple project. It's involved. It's a little mysterious, but I'm going to be watching that meeting. So any thoughts on that news story, RFM, as far as the legal side of it? The lawsuit is still ongoing. We'll just say that. And the church is trying to align itself with the city to use its deep pockets to fight the residents who are fighting out of their own pockets. And they do that. They did that in Heber, and I think they tried in Cody, or they did in Cody.
You think they're using city funds in order to finance the churches being part of it as an amicus?
I don't know, but I know that the
I
church
wouldn't expect so.
Yeah, the church has requested to be listed with the city as, yeah, exactly, which is standard, is what they do. So,
yes.
Yep, interesting. So keep watching Lone Mountain, everybody. We'll see what happens at that meeting.
Are you going to be live streaming this tomorrow?
No, not this one. Not about the easement. So not this time.
One thing I would add to this is you're seeing communities push back.
Big time.
The only way the general public is going to win is if every community does this going forward. If you do not think the LDS church or your city government are playing by the rules, then you figure out how you fight it. And if the church is fought over and over and over and over again, eventually there will be enough egg on their face that they'll have to do something different. Either
follow the law.
Yeah. Either they will spend too much money beyond what they would like to be spending on these things, or the public opinion will become so negative that one of those two things have to happen before the LDS church decides to back down.
How is there nobody with enough sense in the top leadership of this church to let them know that this is what's happening?
Yeah.
That the church is being hated because of the way the church is acting about these temple shenanigans.
Yeah.
It's a good question. We really can't understand at all. We know they watch news, broadcasts like this, and we know they hear our reporting and read the stories. So I don't know. I guess maybe we're like ants, right? Just ants squish on the ground. All right, we have a couple more really quick ones and kind of interesting ones. I couldn't let it go without mentioning that, of course, as we talked about last time, the prophet, age 100, dedicates the church's 200th temple. They call it House of the Lord. I'm still going to always call it a temple. It's another phrase I refuse to use. And this is the Deseret Peak, Utah temple. If you guys missed our Mormonish episode about the true story behind this temple, you can catch that. It's on our YouTube channel. Very, very interesting. If you go to the next slide. So he was there dedicating in person the temple. The thing I love the most about the article in the church news is it says, during the day, the temple's copper-plated central spire reflects the sunlight. At night, the lights of the temple stand out against the dark backdrop of the mountains. Of course they stand out. It's all you can see, and you're killing the birds. And anyway, don't get me started, but they announced that as if it's something to be proud of. And there's a picture of the Deseret Peak Temple, Utah temple. So anyway,
and it's funny because in the meetings where they're trying to get their temples approved, they talk about how the light is not going to be an issue.
Exactly. And they're proud here. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's so funny. There it is. So interesting. President Nelson, again, they talked about how the Lord has told them to build the temple. That's why they're doing it. And why they need so many temples is for the second coming, more of the dialed up apocalyptic second coming rhetoric. Kind of proud of that AI. It's like Jesus with a volcano exploding behind him, sort of a thing. And then they said, and the Lord is hastening the work, right? That's what? Oh, sorry. I thought somebody said something. The Lord is hastening his work by building all these temples. And then I got some information. If you go to the next slide, this is great. From our friend Ganesh, right? Who's from New Zealand. And there's a Wellington temple going in New Zealand. There's already 2 other temples, and there's a Wellington temple being built. Now, the church says they need 3 temples. There's 116,000-ish members, 30 stakes, 29 wards and branches, and also 3 missions there. So, well, Ganesh pointed me in the direction of the latest census data, which has just come out. If you go to the next slide, and they take the census every 5 years. And so what we learn from this is that in the last 5 years, 225 people have joined the LDS Church to increase their number. It has increased by 225 people in the last 5 years. Now, granted, some of these other religions have decreased, and this is self-reported on a census. And I find that anywhere people self-report religions, there's sort of a disparity between the church's numbers and the self-reported religious numbers. I mean, what do you see there? The church said 116,000-ish. What do you see, RFM, as far as how many members self-reporting that they are LDS?
Oh, sorry, you're down on that line. Yeah, from
At the very
54,123 to 54,348. That's what you're looking for?
Yeah. The church says there's 116,000 members. How many does the self-reporting census say?
And keep in mind too that
I'm sorry, a little less than half of that number.
That's right. A little less than half. That's exactly
I'm
right.
sorry. I wanted to answer the question. Sorry.
Yeah, totally.
That was the question. You did it. We don't have to talk in specifics. What were you going to say, Bill?
Just that 54,000 includes less active members who are proud of being Mormon, just not going.
Mormon, yeah.
But the ones that don't they don't self-identify as Latter-day Saints almost certainly are not, with a high propensity, are not involved, or don't consider themselves Latter-day Saints. They're not participating. It is weird how the church always uses anybody on the rolls up to 110 years old, by the way, if they can't find them. It is sort of a strange way to justify what things need to be used, the use of things will be.
That's it. We need 3 temples because of this. Yet self-reporting is half that number. Reminds us of last week or the week before where we talked about Belgium. And there was a cult watching arm of their government in Belgium that said, we don't understand why you're inflating your numbers. It was a red flag, right? Why are you saying there are more people than there are? So anyway, I just put this up there to show hastening the work. I'm not sure. And Third Temple, Wellington, I don't know. Membership is not quite what they say. So, all right, let's go to our next one. Okay, this is hilarious. I went to Thrive over the weekend. This is a big gathering. It was in Lehigh. I met so many people. If you hear my voice a little raspy today, more than normal, I talked nonstop to people, Mormonish viewers, people that loved the newscast. I had so many people come up to me and say, I love the newscast. I love those guys. So we got a lot of warm fuzzies from that meeting and meeting all these wonderful people. Hi, everybody who I met. Anyway, this one woman came up to me and she said, I live in Elko, Nevada, and they're building the Elko, Nevada temple. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that it's almost done. You know, it's almost complete. And she goes, yeah, well, it's right next to a golf course, the Ruby View golf course. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. They tend to build them in affluent areas. And then she said, there's a problem with the 4th hole. Okay. So right then I got out my notebook. I'm like, what? Tell me more. Apparently the 4th hole is too close to the temple. It's going to cause a distraction. It's going to cause some noise when people yell, 4, or, you know, swearing, throwing their clubs. So this woman told me that the church had asked if they could not use the 4th hole anymore. I don't know if that means you have to relocate it or what you have to do. So that, of course, sent me straight to AI. If you go to the next slide, because I thought, how awesome would this be? This is Landon, my co-host, joke, the Holy of Holies, of course. And there's Jesus out on the course. But isn't that crazy to think that the church could say, we're going to build our building here. This golf course has been here forever. And you're just going to have to do something about that 4th hole because we just can't have that confusion or noise. So if anybody knows more about that story, I'd love to hear, because that's so entertaining to me. What do you guys think about that?
As far as the church is concerned, boundaries is a completely foreign language.
That's it. Yep. 100%. The Holy of Holies. So we'll have to find out if that's really true. Okay. We're almost finished here. Like I said, lots of really interesting temple news. Okay. This is absolutely fascinating. Okay. This temple is called the Tarawa Kiribati Temple. I know I'm not pronouncing that right. It was announced in 2020. The groundbreaking and dedication of the site was in 2024 November. It's just a smaller temple, and it's going to be built, and I'll show you some pictures later, on this kind of little strip, Pacific Island. And at the groundbreaking ceremony, it says, today's breaking of the ground is symbolic of planting a giant coconut or a breadfruit seed. It will produce the greatest harvest we have seen or can conceive of for generations. And he goes on to talk about that. At the end, he says, the temple that will be built on this spot will provide great protection from the storms of life. If you go to the next slide, it's interesting to see that instead of the golden shovels here, they use sort of a more, looks a little more natural.
Traditional?
Traditional, sort of tribal shovel. I thought that was kind of interesting. And so they will protect you from the storms of life. Okay, so let's go to the next one.
Yeah, not real storms, by the way. Just storms of life.
No, this is what I'm trying to say. Okay, this will give us the protection against the storms of life. Hold on, I'm going through my thing here. And here's what's really interesting. Okay, so then I came across this post where somebody says, the church begins construction on the most daft temple ever. Do you guys know what daft means?
Daft?
Daft. I
Someone
love that
calls
word.
it daft?
I know. I'm so happy someone called it daft. This person knows. They said, Kiribati is going to be the first casualty of global warming. While Kiribati streets are being moved and homes relocated as the sea level rises, the church just held its groundbreaking ceremony. The temple lot is a narrow, flat, 3/4 acre section on Tarwana next to the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. If you can believe that or not, that's what that's a picture of right there. And just a foot above sea level. The back of the temple parking lot will be against the sea on one side, while the road in front of the temple lot is against the sea on the other side. No basement is possible, meaning that the necro-baptistry cannot be below ground as the church has maintained in the past. In 20 years, access to the temple will require a canoe. Nature has a harsh way of dealing with global warming denial. So I read that and I thought, what? Could this be true? Would the church build a temple on a piece of land that is, that people know is sinking or is not going to be around in a couple decades? And you can see
the people
there.
in Heber.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's all about the water. It's very important. Yeah. In one place they're pumping it out and another place it's coming in. But you can see that narrow neck of land right there where they're going to be building it. And it is right next to the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. And if you go to the next slide, I have some pictures of what it actually looks like. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? So I did some research and it says in 2008, 12 years before the announcement of the temple, the Kiribati government officially acknowledged that their country will soon be gone. Okay, so this is years before the temple was announced. The government itself says this is happening. And they have requested Australia and New Zealand to accept all of its citizens as future refugees. It is sad and twisted kind of, anyway, somebody goes on. So what year will it sink? Did some more research. The eastern part of Tarawa is called the North Tarawa and the southern part is called South. That makes sense. In 1999, the two islands, once part of North Tarawa, disappeared underwater. Both were uninhabited. According to the World Bank, 18 to 80% of North Tarawa could be underwater by 2050. So we're just talking about less than 2 decades, 2 decades away. Let's go to the next slide. So, of course, other pictures of the island here, you can see there's a lot of water and they have these ideas on the right of perhaps creating these man-made floating islands that they would move everybody to. Really innovative. This would be amazing if this could happen. If you go to the next slide, of course, I thought, what would it be like to have a temple that ended up underwater, a Mer temple? That would be nice. What do you guys think about this? Why would they build a temple in an area that is so compromised?
What I think is get back to me in 20 years and we'll talk.
You don't think it's going anywhere, even though they've asked the government has asked other countries to take the citizens in?
All I'm saying is get back to me in 20 years and we'll talk.
And that's it.
Yeah. I think, RFM, I won't put you on the spot here, but the debate is whether global warming is a real thing or not, right? And
the debate is whether it's caused by man and whether man can do anything about it.
Right. But either way, the risk of putting the temple in a place where if global warming is man-made or not, if it happens. But I will say this, I think this is an important thing. This emeritus LDS general authority believes in climate change. He's not sure other top leaders do. And this was like a month ago. I saw this today.
Sorry, go ahead.
I saw this today. And when you guys started talking about this temple being built and global warming, it reminded me of the story. It is former church historian, trying to find here, but it's Elder Snow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where they put his name. Stephen E. Snow, former church historian, Emeritus General Authority. His quote, "It would be a good thing for them to do," talking about taking precautions and starting to be a voice for global warming, said Snow, who is a passionate environmentalist. But the 17.2 million member Global Faith is a, quote, big organization that can move slowly, and many in the leadership do not share the opinion that I have about climate change. That's perfectly appropriate. So Elder Snow is saying the top leaders don't believe in it, and that may be sort of why you're seeing your story, which is they don't care where the temple goes because they don't believe that's going to happen.
Yeah, or they think perhaps that the second coming will happen and then the temples will all be protected. You know, maybe it's kind of a vote of confidence that we can put it wherever we want. Or maybe someday there'll just be a steeple sticking out of the ocean. Maybe that's why there are such tall steeples.
I find there to be a lot of similarities between the global warming predictions and the second coming predictions.
There you go. We'll see. Like you said, talk to us in 20 years. Okay.
Do you
So this
think
story.
the top leaders believe Jesus is coming back soon?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I think they do.
I can't read their minds, Bill.
I think they do.
Oh, all right.
Some of them
I
do.
know some of them
Stevenson
are
and
talking
Nelson-
about it an awful lot.
That's what I was going to say. Stevenson and Nelson dialed it up at the last conference. Okay, so this made me remember this little known thing. I don't know if you guys know about this, but I knew about this. Have you heard of this before?
I knew. I read the book. I read it.
The book. The temple ship proposed by David O. McKay. There was somebody else that had the idea. And this guy, David O. McKay, went to the first presidency and they said, and this is in Greg Prince's book, they said the proposal offered a 1,000-ton vessel could be purchased and remodeled for $2 million and operated for about $500,000 a year, cheaper than any other temple at the time. Okay. And the ship would be able to sail both the high seas and large rivers, including the Mississippi and Missouri, and repeat its circuit every year. This is what they're saying. We can have so many people go to the temple. It's just on a large boat. However, the first presidency, it was N. Eldon Tanner, Alan Dreyer, and Joseph Fielding Smith, were less than enthusiastic due to various questions of temples being built outside the states of Zion and the curse placed upon the water. That would not be good, right? You can see where that's not going to work. The curse on the water in the last days. And there would be such an urgent push for temple work in remote places, since most of these temple works would be accomplished in the millennium. We don't need temples in these places. It's all going to happen in the millennium. So a very different point of view. But if you go to the next slide, had to go over to AI just to see what a temple ship, the Lord's boat. If you want me to sing it, I can sing it. The Lord's
Let's sing it.
boat, right?
Soon
Promise
we'll be
salvation
making
for
another
everyone.
run.
Yeah, I mean, I made up the whole song. Call me. So there it is, going from
And give her
port to
credit
port.
this time, dang it.
That's right. It's my
Yes.
song, The Lord's Boat. So-
Don't be stealing any more of Rebecca's songs, Colt. You know what we're talking about.
But again, they do have a lot of metaphors about boats. And this was an idea back in the 60s, but it didn't catch on. All right, let's go to, I think, my final slide here. This just brings up one thing, talking about all these temples that are being built and President Nelson dedicating the 200th temple, right? But as we talked about last week, there are 367 announced temples, would be 8, but they took China off the list. So this graphic that I have here, announced temples versus completed temples. And it's just, you know, there's 167 temples that are still in the pipeline. Now, when I talked to Laura Lee Hall, who is the former chief architect of temples for the LDS Church, she said they have not changed the way they build temples. There is no way they can move all these temples that we're talking about through the pipeline. They're still only putting out 6, 7, 8, 9 temples a year. Something has to change. So just seeing this over and over and reporting on this, I'm going to go on record saying at some point, there's going to have to be some huge meeting of the minds in the church, something where everybody comes together, all the architects, all the planners, all the powers that be, they come together, they meet, and they're going to have to streamline this process if they want to get these temples built. They're going to have to figure out a way to make it more prefab, pop-up, even the bigger temples. They're going to have to radically rethink and redo how they do temples, because 8 or 9, 6 or 7 a year, that's not going to cut it with all these announcements. So I'm just going on record saying there's going to have to be some kind of big get together where they all meet and come up with a new strategy. And then I think there'll be so much temple news of building and towns saying no that we won't even, we're going to need our own channel, like a spin-off of the newscast to talk about this, or of Mormonish. So
just think how much money the church could save by following the law. They wouldn't have to pay all the legal fees, and they could actually build smaller temples that fit within the zoning requirements.
It seems so logical. I don't know how anyone could pay attention to it.